Theory time. Most of us believe, for good reason, that Breath of the Wild takes place in the adult timeline, after Wind Waker, basically because of rock salt, rust, and Koroks. Others believe that it could take place in the Downfall timeline, because that's a timeline where Link fails against Ganon, and here we see Link in a resurrection chamber, being resurrected? Plus the layout of the white flowers around the Master Sword, which is a bit of a stretch in my opinion. I myself had a running theory that Breath of the Wild takes place in a fourth timeline, and is both a sequel and a prequel to Skyward Sword, split by the time travel mechanic in the game. Say what? For more on that, check out this video right here. Recently, I found myself challenging this theory and turning to the child timeline. Sure, the child timeline has been suggested before due to the design of the castle where Calamity Ganon appears to be trapped, being strikingly similar to the Twilight Princess castle, and because of the Great Bridge of Hylia appearing in both games, though in Breath of the Wild's version it doesn't have a balustrade running down the side. You know, safety first, people. The issue with this theory was that the Temple of Time is still standing in Breath of the Wild rather than the open ruin that we see it in Twilight Princess, and also out in the open rather than enshrined in the Lost Woods. The reason these points were always issues before is because when considering the timeline, we've always looked at Breath of the Wild as taking place after Twilight Princess. But what if? What if Breath of the Wild is placed between Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess? Okay, so let's look at what support there is for this theory. The timeline states that during this time, Ganondorf, the demon thief, is executed. We also see this in Twilight Princess. Let's take a look. Man, that's pretty extreme. Going by the assumed timeline, Zelda tattles on Ganondorf to her father using information that she gets from a 10-year-old boy who claims to have come back from the future. The king then, gets the sages to execute Ganon on the spot? So that doesn't quite stack up, holding Ganondorf accountable for the actions that he's now unable to accomplish because Link is headed to Termina with the Ocarina of Time and is not able to open the Door of Time in the Temple of Time, leaving the Triforce safely sealed away. So what's with this Minority Report approach? It's safe to assume that Ganondorf probably did something a little bit more extreme to get the Twilight sentence. I've touched on this theory before in my very first video, which was about the correlation of the maps in the Zelda games. Hyrule Castle from Ocarina of Time sits in the same space as the new Lake Hylia from Twilight Princess, when using the Temple of Time and Death Mountain as points of reference. So, is it possible that an enraged Ganondorf tried to destroy Castletown in order to open the Door of Time by force? I mean, why else was it destroyed in Twilight Princess and vacated? In the adult timeline of Ocarina of Time, we saw that Hyrule Castle was also reduced to a crater. Could the same thing have happened in the child timeline? Was the original castle always destined to be reduced to a crater that would later be used to divert an aquifer and turned into a natural water supply for the new population of the new Hyrule Castle town? It's interesting to note the water level in the Breath of the Wild artwork that was released just before E3, and then in the later Twilight Princess. It looks like it's slowly draining down over the centuries. Back to Ganonity. Whoops, there goes gravity. With the lack of the Triforce, maybe he tried to find some other means of unlocking the power needed to take Hyrule. Some dark magic akin to the fused shadow that let the inner malice inside of him, the Curse of Demise, reawaken. A power so formidable that the Sheikah decided to unleash their last line of defense, the Guardians, in order to protect Hyrule. In the end, the resurgence could perhaps have only been contained by the heir of Zelda, trapping him inside the new stronghold for the royal family. The only thing left would be to bring back the Hero of Time to return Calamity Ganon back to his normal state, so that an execution could finally be staged. The ensuing battle with Calamity Ganon could have caused an actual calamity, some kind of cataclysm which resulted in the land of Hyrule being divided up by great fissures that we see in Twilight Princess all over the land. In Twilight Princess, we can even see that Hyrule Castle is still undergoing some kind of repairs along the roof and in several turrets and towers from some kind of perhaps earthquake or seismic event. Link may have known that this execution of Ganondorf did not succeed, and therefore set about to become the hero's shade, in order to train his successor to defeat him when he inevitably returns, years later on, when the Temple of Time has fallen apart and the Lost Woods have finally ensnared it in its tangled weave. The other possibility is that Link from Breath of the Wild is not the Hero of Time, but one of his early descendants, before the Hero of Twilight. The reason I say early is because of the Gerudo gauntlets that he's seen wearing in the game footage. In my video about the connections between the Gerudo and the Sheikah, can we get a thumbnail of that one? Yeah. Cool, thanks. There it is right there. In that video, I alluded to the common theory that Malon is a hybrid Hylian Gerudo due to her affinity with horses and her flaming red hair. It also seems a common understanding that Malon and the Hero of Time end up together in the child timeline. This is due to the fact of the Hero of Twilight being born in Orden Village, which is in the same area as Lon Lon Ranch was, and the ranch-like nature of the village, as well as the appearance of the characters Talo and Malo, who appear to be the namesakes of the old owners of Lon Lon Ranch. So, if Malon was a Gerudo, perhaps there was some heirloom from her mother, who, against tradition, left her with her father, an heirloom her father was going to pass on to her when the time was right, and that heirloom got passed on by her to one of her sons or grandsons, and that grandson was the hero in Breath of the Wild. Ooh, didn't see that coming, did ya? Moving on, what about Wolf Link, you ask? Yeah, so that's a bit of a problem, until you think about this. There is the vague possibility that the wolf is a guardian spirit of some kind from the Twilight Realm, a kind of dark echo of the hero's spirit. When Midna first finds Wolf Link, she claims that she was looking for him, even though Link in this game had not shown any real feats of bravery. She knows that he is a human, but the first time she chooses to step in and help him is after he's transformed into the wolf. In Breath of the Wild, Wolf Link appears to be a guardian or a guide of some kind to Link in the game, once you tap the amiibo of course, which you can buy for $24.99 New Zealand dollars. The importance of this connection between the player and the guide resonates with the hero's spirit, and when his ancestor enters the Twilight Realm centuries later, he also takes on that form. And think about this, when the light spirit Farron meets the hero of Twilight for the first time, he even makes a point of saying, "In the land covered in twilight," and twilight's in red, okay? "Where people roam as spirits, you were transformed into a blue-eyed beast." And again, the beast part of the talking is in red text, maybe Calibri font. I don't know. If you know what the font is, leave a comment in the comment section below. Really appreciate getting to the bottom of this one. The next thing that Farron says is, "That was a sign. It was a sign that the powers of the Chosen One rest within you." So this tells us the beast form that Link takes on isn't some arbitrary gimmick in the game, it's something a little bit more meaningful. It doesn't explain how the chain and the cuff on his paw also appears in Breath of the Wild, because that, as we know, was placed on him when he got put in Hyrule Castle, but hey, that's neither here or there. Anyway, that nearly wraps up my theory. Is it plausible? Maybe. There are some points to contest this theory, and I am going to read them to you right as soon as I scroll down in my script to the... here they are. One of these points is the mystery of the Master Sword appearing damaged and rusted in an area completely separate from the Temple of Time in Breath of the Wild, which, as we know, it was placed in at the end of Ocarina of Time and then found again in Twilight Princess. So what happened in the time in between to get it out into the wilderness? Well, I have a thought about that. Think about what happened to the sword at the end of Skyward Sword. It was enshrined in the sealed grounds with the residual consciousness of demise inside of it. In the adult timeline, Link takes the sword with him into the sacred realm, and Ganon never touches it, until 7 years later when Link thrusts it through his face. But in the child timeline, Link is in Termina. So let's say that Ganondorf lays siege to Hyrule Castle Town under his own power in an attempt to grasp the Triforce for himself, tears the temple open with his power. In a last-ditch effort to stop him, Impa releases the Guardians, which swarm towards him all over the temple, but it's too late. Ganon finds the Master Sword, and when he connects with it, he interfaces with the dormant consciousness of Demise. The result? Calamity Ganon is born, and the Sword of Evil's Bane is damaged in the exchange. Even though it's a tried and tested mechanic, we might see the Hero of the Wilds. That's what I'm going to call him now. Link from Breath of the Wild, Hero of the Wilds. That's what I'm talking about when I use that word. It's a faster way of me explaining who he is rather than saying Link from Breath of the Wild. So when you hear me saying Hero of the Wilds, that's Link, but Link from Breath of the Wild. It's just a more convenient way of portraying who he is. So when I say Hero of the Wild, you know that that's Link from Breath of the Wild and not any of the other Links like the Hero of Time, Hero of Twilight, Hero of Winds. Cool? We got that clear? Just in terms of making things easier for everyone, that's what I'm going to call him. It might even catch on. I might have coined a phrase. Who knows? Nintendo, every time Hero of the Wild is used, I would like to have 10 cents, thank you. Moving on. We may see him taking a familiar path with tempering the Master Sword. If you want to hear more on that theory, I do have a fanfiction in progress over on the Zelda Amino app, along with full original artworks to complement the story. Zelda Amino is a great mobile application of a fan-based community filled with a lot of great content, as well as some complete nerds like me, and really cool people like you, so you should join if you haven't already. And they didn't pay me to say that. Anyway, I'm going to leave this theory here for you to pick apart in the comments section, but while you do, consider this. If Breath of the Wild does take place in the child timeline, that means that somewhere out there, the fierce deity mask is floating around. Just think about how cool that would be if it did pop up. Anyway, thank you once again for watching my video. If you've liked this, please feel free to subscribe. If you're interested in the Amino, I'll leave a link to it down in the app. I'll leave a link to the app down in the comment section below, and please feel free to come back by, and I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, and cheers.